Okie dokie, here we go. I'm on break, so I am going to do some of these. It's just me, and I don't really have a script, but these are going to be recorded. You can watch them later, and I'm just going to share things that come to mind. I have these different thoughts that go through my head that I want to share with people, with family, talking about life and life in recovery. Um, so that's the plan. I don't know how long I'm going to talk. It might be 10 minutes. It might be an hour. Today's a light day on my calendar. I have a meeting at what time? Ooh, let's go to today. 10 a.m. So I got time. I got at least an hour. And so let's see what happens. Share this. You can create a watch party on your own page. If you want to get other people, if you like what I talk about, if you follow me and you see my quotes of the day and my little daily videos, you can get other people to join. So if you think this might be helpful, yeah, share it. Create a watch party. There's a way to do that on Facebook, and for whatever reason I can't see it right now because I'm talking to you. Yeah, maybe I can do it right from here. Let me see. Nope. I just want to try to get a nice wide swath of an audience. All right. So what I did is, one thing I want to start with this. Recovery works, lives change. Remember that, because that's just a fact. There are over 25 million people in recovery just in our country alone, even more across the globe. Recovery does work. If you watch this now, or if you watch the recording, if someone recommends you to watch this later, I want you to know that recovery is possible. I lived a life that was crazy beyond many people's wildest dreams. It was a shit show. It was ugly. That's my last booking photo in Pierce County Jail in the mid-90s. It was ugly, right? That was one pretty low spot for me. And you don't have to get there. It's a myth. It pisses me off. It's a myth that you have to hit bottom before you can find recovery. That's a myth, and that myth has to die. Now, so with that said, if you are thinking about a life in recovery, if you're what I was for many years in my from my teens to my mid-20s, I was pretty functional. I held a job. I paid taxes. I had relationships and all of that. And it wasn't always pretty, but outside looking in, I was pretty. You've heard the term probably functional alcoholic, right? And that was me. But inside, right, I knew, and I had people telling me, I had some messaging along the way that, my son's mother, Cindy, my ex-wife, my first wife, she used to always say, drink your beer, but don't drink Jack Daniels, because when you drink hard liquor, it's just ugly, right? So I would try to manage that. I was in the military. I was young, 17 to 20 years old, and I drank and smoked pot my entire time in the military, along with many of my buddies. Very normal. And I was the one, again, talking about kind of those early days. If you're in this category where you can manage it, right, for the most part, and I could manage it for the most part in my younger years, but I struggled internally for sure. And I had some incidents happen where it was like, maybe drinking's just not something you should do, right? Because I would try to manage it in all the different ways, and I'd smoke pot and not drink, or I'd drink and smoke pot or not smoke pot, or I'd not drink hard liquor, to try to do all these things. But it was fairly functional. right? So if that's you, if you're thinking, God, I have a job, I have a wife and kids, or I have a husband and kids, or my life it's okay. You don't have to go down further. You don't have to go to this. You don't. You can make a decision to turn it around now. So that's one thing that crosses my mind a lot, because I see quotes and I see people say, and I even catch myself sometimes thinking, well, they're just not ready yet. Well, I can tell you this, that I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready when I made the decision to turn things around in the mid 90s. I didn't want to necessarily quit doing drugs or drinking or smoking pot, for sure. I was one that said I was going to drink and smoke pot forever. And, I'm an American, and blah, blah, blah. I serve my country. I didn't necessarily want to give those up, but I didn't want to go to prison. I was pretty afraid of going to prison, and I turned it around, right? I didn't really want to quit drinking and using per se. It was really that struggle, that internal struggle, that I felt alone. I felt disconnected. I think of a guy who's a journalist, and he's done a lot of work in our arena of recovery. And he has a quote that I really like, and it says, "The opposite of addiction is connection." Whew, man, and it's beautiful. Check him out, Johan Hari. He has some great TED Talks, and I buy in. I believe what he talks about, that the opposite of addiction is connection. And that's really what I wanted. So I didn't need to hit some fictitious bottom to want that or desire that. So it's a myth. I want to say that it's a myth that someone has to hit rock bottom before they can find a life in recovery. That myth has to die. So kind of, I told myself I wasn't going to really have a plan for this, so I'm going to kind of stick to that. But I want to say, if you're watching this, if you're just listening to this as you're doing your thing, you can do this. You can do this. If this guy, right? If this kid, me from the streets of Tacoma, literally, who when I do these talks, I'm going to share bits of my history, right? If I can do it, you can do it. And if someone shares this with you and you are in a really bad place, if I do a lecture, a monthly lecture at an all-male treatment center in the Lower Valley, JOTC, it's a great organization. My son's a counselor there. And, a lot of those guys are like me. They've been through it all. And I tell them, so if this is you, and I don't care if you're 20 years old, you're 40 years old, or you're 70 years old, if in your mind and if your environment is shitty and it's fucked, right? If you're in your head going, this is fucked, there is no way I can get out of this. I pulled this out of my closet. This is my past, right? This is all I keep from my past. It's my history. And this is this is my all my this isn't all of it. I just kept snippets of it. But all my citations, just a few of them. This is my DOC. I had to pay $20 a month to be on Department of Corrections. I had literally thousands of dollars in court fines. There's my driving abstract, right? And all the fines attached to that. That number on this one is $2,200. I owed over $13,000 in back child support. Oh, here's a better one that really, this is when I was starting to work on it, right? I mean, a lot of money, right? And time and effort. I have in here my old court. Oh man, wow. When I had to go down, because I was basically out on probation, and if I screwed up, I would go back to prison. This was my first sign up for probation. That's when I lived on Hilltop, okay, with my a stepdad. These are, what do I got over here? Oh, this is all my court stuff. Okay, a lot of it. So that's just one folder. And then these I've saved my times at Ola Guest Lodge. Yep. An amazing treatment facility in between Gig Harbor and Port Orchard. So if you know the little area town of Olala, this is a great place. And I went to treatment twice. I actually went to treatment more than that. I went to inpatient treatment twice. I like the term, it takes what it takes. You keep going. This, here I go. This is a health condition that we keep treating until the person gets better. We don't just go, well, he went to treatment once and he didn't get it, so he must not want it. No, garbage. If you've been to treatment before, and I say this when I do this lecture, I say, if you've been to treatment once or 20 times, it matters not to me. What matters is right now, right? I had 10 and a half years of complete abstinence and long-term recovery, and I returned to use, right? And some will say, okay, you start over. Well, the date on which I started complete abstinence, yeah, that became new again, but I didn't lose all of that 10 years of skills and behaviors that helped me in recovery, right? So you don't lose that. You don't give that up. You can take from those experiences, take those things that worked and bring them right up front, right? So if you're like me, right? Oh, I remember this. We had to write an obituary. Oh, wow. You want to hear it? Let's see if anyone wants to hear this. Tell me if you want to hear it. Comment if you want to hear this. If anyone's watching this, give me a comment and tell me that you want to hear this. Because I'll read it. I don't even know if anyone's watching. But if you are, give a comment and tell me you want me to read this. Let's see if anyone. Give a thumbs up, because I'll read it. It's what my obituary would have been. Ooh. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. All I need is one person to say they want me to read what my obituary would have been if I wouldn't have found a life in recovery. Okay, I'm going to read it. Born June 3rd, 1967, as David Anthony Douglas. Left behind were his son, Tyler, mother, Gail, father, Gerald, brother, Bob, sisters, Tina and Sherry, nieces and nephews, Andrew, Dawn, Rendale, Aubrey, Bobby, Spencer, Tommy, Rebecca, Angel, Jenny, Ricky. Many other relatives and friends too numerous to name. He will be remembered as a man who loved all, but most of all was at a point in his life where he wanted to learn to love himself, so he in turn could give even more back. He was excellent with his son and his nieces and nephews. He will be missed by all who were able to get to know him. So this is an exercise you do in treatment, and you write an obituary, and I must not have the one, as if you kept using drugs and alcohol. How would that be? And I talk about, what do you want your legacy to be? Because the legacy is important. For me, as a father and a man, that I want my legacy to be strong. And so I look at this, and this was written years ago. This is 1996. And a life in recovery, this is what my obituary will read, instead of being a pretty negative scenario. So back to what I was saying, if you're watching this and you think, I just don't know if I can do this, you can. You can do this. If I can do this with all the craziness that I've experienced in my life, based on my childhood, early adult years, through my use of alcohol, marijuana, crack cocaine, methamphetamines, you name it. If I can come from where I've come to where I am today, which is a pretty amazing place, I got to tell you, you can. I believe it, and I want you to believe it. So now, how do you do that? Yeah, you're like, well, I want to, but how do I do that? Well, I was just listening to a podcast this morning, Brené Brown, and the gentleman's name that she was interviewing, I'm going to start checking him out because it was really cool. His name, David Eagleman. And the podcast was the inside story of the ever-changing brain. The really helpful thing for me has been to create positive behaviors. And early recovery, he even talked about people in early recovery, in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, all the recovery groups. And I remember this, it was true. And it's true for us in our home today, is take all the paraphernalia and alcohol out of your home, right? That's one of the first things you should do. So that way, when that temptation comes, you're less likely to drink and or use. It's a beautiful thing. And that starts rewiring your brain, right? A lot of the recovery skills are all about rewiring, re-recording our tapes, right? I had a lot of tapes in my head that I had to change. And it's through positive skills, through shifting our brain, shifting how we think, shifting what we do. And it's so important in early recovery, so important. That's why recovery groups say 90 meetings in 90 days. That's why treatment is 21 to 28 days. Some people don't know. Do you know why? Most inpatient treatment are 21 to 28 days. Takes about 3 to 4 weeks to create and or change a habit. Beautiful. Right? There's a whole bunch more after that needs to happen. But mornings, I want you to think about for yourself, when is the time of day that you might struggle the most, right? When the temptation to drink or use might be there. And or when is your tough time in your brain during the day? And mine has always been the morning. Morning was, I've struggled with depression and anxiety my whole life, a lot of worry. And so mornings have always been the time. I'm pausing because they're not anymore. But so listen, if mornings are tough for you, if when upon waking, you have a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of negative tapes, and that could steer you toward a return to use, then that's when you need to change behavior, right? Set an alarm clock and get up an hour earlier than what you need to. It'll be hard at first, but I can tell you it'll be highly beneficial. Get up and go for a walk. I go for a morning walk with the girls, Daisy and Chiba. They're there, they're napping now. I go for a morning walk every day, 365 days a year, first thing in the morning. And when I say first thing in the morning, I get up, I make that first cup of coffee, I feed the girls, and we head out the door. 365 days a year. And I can tell you that I don't think I've missed a day in a long time. And the walk, it used to be a mile, might have been a little longer, but Chiba, Granny, she's 13 now. She's an amazing dog, but she's, the walk's shorter. It's 3/4 of a mile, but we do that walk every morning. And I'm going to tell you it's not magic, but the magic of that is when I get up every morning and get outside the house and get out into nature, right? You go outside, you're breathing in fresh air. It's cold this time of year, but I'm still doing it. It's a whole different experience. It shifts my brain, right? Some mornings I wake up and I'm in a negative space, or I'm worrying about, whatever it is. And I've created this habit of get up, go for the walk. And almost invariably every time I can tell you we have two routes, either right over here or right over here. My mindset starts shifting. So think about that. If you're wanting to change your relationship with drugs and alcohol, I want you to think about when during the day you are most apt to drink and or use. That's where you need to put some type of positive behavior, some type of skill to shift you away from that, to change that, right? In essence, walk through that. So think about that for yourself. Do whatever it is you need to do. If you're thinking about changing your relationship with drugs and alcohol, number one, get everything out of your house. This is hard. I know this is hard. You're going to have to change some relationship with friends you have, likely, even maybe family. And I've had this conversation with people many times. And it's the conversation of, you know, you hear this, and I challenge this. Well, your friends who were drinking or doing drugs with you weren't your friends anyway. No, garbage. That's bullshit. I had people that I knew for a lot of years that I no longer, mostly because of space and time, whatever the case may be, but early recovery, yes, I had to disconnect from those people. And it wasn't about them. It wasn't that we weren't friends. We were friends. It wasn't that maybe once I solidified my recovery, I could hang out with them again. Maybe, maybe not, right? If we're talking just illegal behavior, of course I can't do that. But you know, if someone like now, here's how it is now. I've been in recovery a long time. The desire to drink and use, I have no desire to drink or use. I can go to a function where there's alcohol. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I'm not out to change everyone else. Just because I don't drink doesn't mean other people don't. But early recovery, dangerous, right? The talk this morning on Brené Brown with the gentleman who's doing research on the brain, David Eagleman, he said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's true. Early recovery, and for those that are watching this that are in recovery, you'll know what I'm talking about. A $20 bill, it was like, ooh, whoa. I remember when I got my first good amount of cash after a paycheck or something, and I had money in the bank or cash in my hand, that can be dangerous, right? So maybe it means having a family or friend hold your money for you in early recovery, and you create positive skills. You know, the further away from drug and alcohol use, the easier it will be. That's the truth, right? Because you're going to create skills that you're not going to want to go back to use. I have no desire to drink or use. Through a pandemic, through all the hard stuff, through many things, my mother's death, which is coming on 2 years ago, it was very, very hard. I had no desire to drink or use. Now, I've been through divorce in recovery, and I had no desire to drink or use because I created skills. I retrain my brain to think differently, right? To think when I'm in high stress, usually, you know, negative stress is the toughest. It might be for you positive, because some people, when things are going really good, I've experienced this at times, but mostly for me, it's negative stress would cause me to drink or use. But I've learned skills, right? And you can learn skills to manage the stress. Life recovery, and here's what you hear, right? Recovery is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. No, well, that's life. It's not just recovery. Life is hard at times. I say at times because it's not always hard. I don't like it when I kind of hear people, you know, send the message that recovery is hard and it takes courage. And yeah, it does. But we need to also send the message that it's kind of normal, right? That we're going to go through things in life, whether we're in recovery or not. We're going through things when we're in active use, but our reactions to them are so much different. My reactions to stress today are so much different than they are when I was in active use. Same stress, same scenarios, right? I've been through a divorce in active use and a divorce in recovery. Same type of scenarios and completely different responses. I've been through career changes in active use and in recovery. Same type of scenarios, very normal. It happens in life, right? Whether it's a a loss of a family member, a loss of a friend, a loss of a pet, right? Think about our reactions to those when I was in active use was to get high or get drunk. That was my response. I didn't react to that in a healthy manner. In recovery, I've learned healthy ways to react to those. I think of the time that I spent with my mom in hospice with my sister and my wife and her husband. We were there. We had this kind of team going. And every morning through the 6 weeks that my mom was in hospice till the last day she lived, number one, that was highly stressful. Those that know that have had a family member and you've been through hospice care with them and you've been with them till the day they died, it's very stressful, emotionally, physically, in all ways. Every day I did that walk I talked to you about. Very first thing in the morning. Katrina did it with me. I did it alone. I had the girls, and every morning, even on the day my mom passed, when we were all wondering, is today going to be the day? Even on the days when I felt compelled that I needed to go over there first, I did self-care first, right? That's the change, right? What do we do in active use with that same type of scenario, right? If you're in a functional state in your life, you would go over there, but you'd probably drink or get high before, during, and or after, right? Well, in recovery, we learn skills to deal with those same stressful situations in healthy manners. And mine was going on the walk, right? Apologizing to my wife when I snap at her when we were caring for my mom, right? Being open to listening to others' advice, right? And some might not, but holding back my emotions, right? So that I can be present for my mother, and then crying later. Oh, wow, that's different. In active use, that whole scenario, I wouldn't have even been there. No, it would have been too much. I wouldn't have been able to handle that type of emotional pain, right? So if you're thinking about, or if you are in early recovery, I want you thinking, if you're thinking about getting into recovery, or if you're in early recovery, if you're doing it now, start right. Early recovery is that critical time to start changing and or creating positive habits. You might be able to flick back, right, to a time period when you've been in recovery before, or when drugs and alcohol started causing you problems. You might have had positive habits. You can go back to those. Maybe exercising in the morning, very first thing, was something you remember you used to do when you were younger, and it really helped and it was great. And then you started using drugs and alcohol. Now go back, bring that forward, start doing that. If you're kind of like me, and aside from the military, when I had to exercise, I would exercise, but it was new for me, right? Thinking about my physical health. So think about that for yourself. What can you do in those tough times during the day when right? Because the times during the day when the compulsion, the desire to drink and use are going to be there in those early days of recovery. That's where you need to create positive habits. Mine are, I said, go on the walk, read or listen to something positive. Lately I've been listening to podcasts, putting new information in my brain. It's really good. Music's always good for me, especially in the morning, listening to upbeat music or musicians that mean a lot to me, right? Tom Petty, Bob Seger, right? Even if I'm really feeling like, AC/DC, right? That's positive for me. Don't listen to music that will cause you negative emotions, right? Whatever it is for you. Maybe calling someone. Maybe in early recovery, Stephen was my guy. In 2006, I call him every morning. That's how I started my day in early recovery, right? Talking to someone I talk about, when I do a lecture, I talk about the circle of influence, right? This is something you need to think about, is who's in your circle of influence. Okay, that's if you've been in heavy drug use, or even if you go to the bar every day, right? Probably going to have to look at your circle of influence. Who's in your circle of influence that you could call every morning or every evening, whatever it is for you, at the end of work, if you went to the bar, if you go to the bar every day after work, or if you go home and drink every day after work, or get high every day after work, that's your time. That's when you need to create some type of positive habit to change your tapes, change those wires in your brain. That talk this morning talked about it. Our brain's constantly evolving and changing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a good thing. And I don't care where you're at, if you're there or if you're functional, right? If you're not in jail, I've never been to jail, but your life sucks because of alcohol and drugs, and you want to change that behavior, you can change this thing in here, right? And that's where it's at. So think about that for yourself. What can you do during those tough times when you know if it's daily or certain times like weekends, if weekends are your time, if you're like, well, you know what, I can go without drinking through the work week. It's not a problem. It's the weekends. Ooh, right? I said played that game. I tried that. I wouldn't drink Monday through Friday. I did this at Loomis. This is years ago, right? Because the guys would go to the bar every day after work. And so what I would do, and it worked, it was helpful. So this may be where you start. I'd say, I'm not going to the bar after work. I'll just drink on the weekends. Well, then I'd catch up on the weekends. Oof, and some. So let's say you're in that scenario now, right? Where you're like, I want to change my relationship. I want to quit drinking altogether. Well, number one, you can do it. I'm here to tell you, you can do it. You can't tell me you can't. So start telling yourself, I can do this. So plan. You have to plan for that Friday after work, right? Number one, if you're the person who drank at home on the weekends, no alcohol in the home. Maybe it means doing something outside of your home, going for a hike, going for a walk, right between say 5 and 7 p.m. Calling a friend, hanging out with a friend, listening to something positive, whatever the case may be. And I'll say this, even during a pandemic, right? All the craziness that's going on, we're not supposed to congregate. You can do it. That'd be even better. Ooh, I don't want Roomba to go off. She's noisy. Hold on. So I think you understand what I'm saying there with creating some type of positive habit. Go to a meeting, go to a virtual meeting. If church is your thing, do church. There are online support groups for all different tastes, right? Smart recovery, secular recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, all sorts, everything. You right here, you have at your fingertips the ability to get support in that way. You could, my friend Sarah, look at, oh my God, what's it been, 7 years ago? I don't know, she never ran at all. Now she's running marathons. It starts with just having some desire to change your behavior. So, yeah, all right. So to give me some more meat here, oh yeah, this is what I want to talk about a little bit. So this is a paper. This was one of the very first papers when I went to school to be a counselor, a drug and alcohol counselor. This is mid-90s. I was, changing my path. This is where my path to where I am today really started changing. And I was in a class, Chemical Dependency in the Family. This one right here, Pierce College. Chemical Dependency in the Family. Should have a date on it. Let's see if I have a date on it. Oh my gosh. What kind of paper is this? No date. But this was 96. Probably summer or fall of 96. This was the start of doing something that has helped me immensely as a person in recovery. And I'm going to tell you, it's educating myself. I spent a lot of years angry at my family, angry at my mom, my brother, the dads of the week, for all the things that happened to me. And rightly so in many cases. Me and my siblings experienced abuse, atrocities, constant moves at levels that you would just like cringe, right? Like we, in Pierce County, I could drive around Pierce County and show you at least 20 different houses we lived in probably an 8-ish, I'm just guesstimating, 8-year span, right? But moving is what we did. We never knew stability. Having dads of the week was very normal. And so I was angry and I blamed, right, my mom, different people in my life for why I became addicted to drugs and alcohol. And well, that's why, of course. And that's true, right? There's some great research that's came out recently surrounding trauma, right? And it has to do, remember, the opposite of addiction is connection. I had no connection. I felt zero connection to family, friends. Making friends has always been hard for me because of just childhood stuff, blah, 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 trust issues. So I blamed a lot of that, and rightly so. But when I entered recovery, and this was actually the first class I took where I learned about family systems. This was specific to chemical dependency in the family, and there's some theories about how families with addiction have these different roles that people play, and some of it's very true. I've learned a lot more about family systems in general. That has helped me more than anything, I think, as a person in recovery. It's educating myself. Because here's what happened for me, and because I just pulled this out, I was cleaning out my mom's memory box. I just had it, so it shouldn't be far. Oh, there it is. I'm still here. Oh, what did I do with it? Oh, I want to find it so you can see it. So this is my little man cave area. And I have a letter that I wrote my mom when I was in recovery. Oh, there it is. Oh, good. And this was probably 97, 98 when I wrote this letter. And it was after I had taken that class and I really started learning the why, right? I started learning about why my mom behaved like she did as a young mother with 4 kids in the 60s and 70s and into, I would have graduated high school in 85. Why? Well, number one, why she always worked. She had to. She didn't have a choice, right? None of our dads, right? We have 3 separate dads. So I'm the youngest of 4. There's me, the baby. There's Sherry, Tina, and Bob. And Bob's father is Jerry Emerson. He's passed on. He's dead. Tina, mom revealed to us, is it Kenny Rogers? It wasn't the Kenny Rogers, but I think she said she remembers his name as Ken. So that's Tina's dad. We don't know who he is, where he is, whatever. And then me and my sister Sherry had our biological father was Danny Douglas. So those are our biological fathers. And Jerry Emerson was my mom's first husband. And then she never married this guy, but she married Danny Douglas. And then she's had, mom was married. Oh gosh, let's see. Jerry Emerson, Danny Douglas, Johnny Revelle, Tom Emerson, Uncle Tom. Yeah, that's a story. Jerry's brother, Tom, mom married our uncle. Yeah. Bill was the other guy. I don't know if she ever married Ed. And I'm probably missing. So what we know of, and then there were a whole bunch of guys in between, There was this mom dated a cop in Portland for a little bit. We would have guys show up and kind of be around for a little bit. And these weren't like, mom met a nice man at work and they started dating and, then they got married. No, these were guys that mom would bring them home at 2 a.m. after the bars closed. And we got to learn, hey, did they have food? What did they bring? A lot of craziness. A lot of craziness. I always think of Ocean Shores, because that's where it was pretty chaotic. We lived in Ocean Shores 74, 75 to 77-ish, couple 3 years. My brother was in high school. I was in elementary school, and just a lot of chaos there. A lot of chaos with Jerry. My mom had ran from my real father and Sherry's real father in 67, 68, because he pulled a gun on her head. He sexually abused my brother. Jerry Emerson sexually abused both of my sisters. These are our biological fathers. So, and my real father, I didn't, Danny Douglas, didn't know him at all. I found him myself when I was in recovery around this time period, when my first couple years in recovery, when the internet, when this was doing this would have been crazy to even think. It'd have been like this friggin' space age. But I used the internet and found Danny Douglas when I was 29 years old. And here's one. He was living 40 miles away. We were living in Tacoma and he was living in Bremerton and had been for 20 years. He retired from the shipyards. So I never had a relationship. We were kind of friends after that. I tried, but it was always tough. Now, if you're listening, my childhood was crazy. I mean, crazy. Just crazy shit. Seeing our mom get beat. I saw that, the A-frame in Ocean Shores. My brother witnessed, because he was older, he witnessed so much, I'm sure. So much. I remember coming home from school, Ocean Shores Elementary. Mom always managed motels or apartment style things. And I remember my mom had a kitchenette that was hers. And my brother and I shared a normal motel room. And then my sisters shared a normal motel room. That's where we lived. So mom had her own kind of place. And I'll never forget coming home. There was an ambulance there. I see my mother in on the couch in the fetal position. She had a nervous breakdown because she never ate well. She always worked, drank, I'm sure smoked pot. I remember catching her smoke pot when I was a teenager. I saw that. I remember that distinctly. We had, it was, I learned this in school, the type of parenting that happens in families. There's, permissive, authoritative, or authoritarian. Okay, so most of the time it was very permissive type of parenting, meaning mom worked all the time. And she worked nights. She worked in the restaurant industry and bars. And so she usually went to work 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and was gone until 2 a.m. Very normal. And so we were in school and then we'd come home and our parents, the majority of the time, was my brother Bob. He was a kid himself. He didn't know how to parent, so he did the best he could given that scenario, but it was crazy. We had permissive. We did what we wanted. We did. I was an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid running around Ocean Shores. I had my dog Bruno, huge short-haired Saint Bernard, and we all, my memories are a lot of time alone. I did my own thing. Same with my siblings. So yeah, there's a little peek into my childhood, a little peek. So imagine, coming to teenage years, shit, my mom, when she was with a functional man, Johnny Ravel, or Uncle Tom, who actually was a good guy, who tried to parent us. I was young enough that he did leave a lasting positive impact on me, but my brother was like, screw you. He was already a teenager. You're not going to parent me. So I can imagine for men coming into my mom's world, it was crazy. Now, so I went into, adulthood, not knowing how to function in relationships myself. Was kind of functional in the world, but then started smoking crack cocaine, did methamphetamines. It went off the deep end because my emotional inside the little boy in me was just crying all the time. And for me, using drugs and alcohol was always about just shoving down the pain. I was sexually abused in my early teens, and that just affected me greatly. And it was hard. Now, so back to this. So I got into recovery and started learning about family systems, about families, and it was very helpful for me. And this letter, when my mom passed, I was going through her things and she always saved it. She used to have it framed in her living room. She never got rid of it. I was able to forgive my mother in recovery. And I'm telling you, if you're in recovery and you're struggling and you're like, I'm still not happy, I'm not, I want to feel better about my world, educate yourself. Kind of step outside. This is what it did for me. Stepping outside of my own family and learning about family systems, I was able to forgive my mother. And so I'm going to read to you what I wrote to my mother in the mid-90s. Mother, I wanted to write you a short note to tell you how glad I am to know you as my mother. I'm the first to admit that my life has not been the best. I also know that you have had your share of bad times also. What I know the most is that you are my mother and I love you. I wouldn't want to change anything that has happened in my life. Things that I've gone through have brought me to where I am today. Today I have direction, a sense of peace, love for others, and a whole lot of gratitude. You will always be the one that I call mom. That is something I will also never want to end. Always remember that I'm in your heart. I'm still your baby boy who longs for his mom's touch. I always long for you to tell me you love me and that you care. We both have had troubled past. What I know now is that past is just that, the past. We can't change it. We can forgive it. I'm happy to know you as my mom. What I'm sharing with you in the following story is the description of my life. I'm sharing it with you to let you know a little bit more about that baby boy you call your son. And I was able to forgive my mom. And for me, the youngest of four, the baby boy who always wanted his mom's attention but never got it, always felt like she had other things, that men were more important, but I was able to let all that go and see my mom for being the human she was. And so that helped me immensely in recovery, educating myself. So educate yourself on whatever you want to learn about yourself so that you can enjoy an amazing life in recovery. I'm going to close with the reality that I have friends who live amazing lives in recovery. Right in your community and my community, we have many people in recovery doing amazing things. And that's what I need from you. I want you to change things for yourself, to realize that you do have control, you do have a say over your thoughts, your behaviors, and you can do things to turn it all around so that you can enjoy a life in recovery. That's it for this one. I hope you have a great Thursday, and I'll do this again.